After some incredible word of mouth and universal critical and commercial success, I watched Obsession late at night in a packed theater next to the love of my life, and it altered my brain chemistry in ways I'm not sure I've ever felt before. Recency bias is a hell of a thing, but I am pretty confident in declaring that this is not only one of my favorite directorial debuts of all time, not only one of my favorite horror films of all time, but simply put, one of my favorite films ever made. Since the moment the credits rolled, my brain has simply refused to give me even a moment's reprieve from analyzing this film's every frame, line, shot, you name it. So let's just get into it. Right off the bat, the premise is just excellent, and the filmmaking immediately reels you in with its claustrophobic close-ups and prolonged shots with our characters. Refusing to cut away is such a great way to allow the performances to really carry certain moments, and by God, was this ever the right film to allow the performances to do a lot of the heavy lifting. The side characters are good to great, and our main character, Bear, played by Michael Johnston, is exactly good enough to be a strong element of a phenomenal film. Unfortunately, these three actors are simply being outclassed by a performance that no amount of hyperpraise could ever adequately express just how generational it truly is. If even for a moment you think I'm being hyperbolic, just watch this thing. Indy Navarrete is insane. This is already one of the single greatest performances of all time, and I do not say that lightly. It is as quietly brilliant as it is outwardly stupendous. Not often do you get a performance that on the surface is this goddamn chilling, captivating, and impressive, while also having so much complexity and nuance looming just beneath the surface. In a world where this were just a regular incredible performance and not the masterpiece I'm making it out to be, I would almost certainly be praising the lighting as the greatest aspect of this film. And it actually goes hand in hand with her performance, since so much of the best moments of lighting revolve around obscuring her body and face. The cinematography in general is ridiculously good, and this film takes extremely concerted steps towards hiding her in shadows and obscuring certain bits of her physicality, and it all works towards the disgusting levels of tension we have throughout this whole film. The pacing is so good in this regard. We get the perfect amount of reprieves from the claustrophobia, and just when we think we might be softening up for a little bit, we're thrust right back into another of the most chilling scenes you've ever seen. The humor here is also top tier, and not because this film is a comedy. I genuinely think your brain might be slightly traumatized if you consider this mostly a comedy. It has excellent bits of humor at key moments, but this narrative is so fucking oppressive, man. I just can't get behind the sentiment that any of this is supposed to be genuinely taken with even a shred of comedy. Comedy and horror share a lot of the same rules, and being able to elicit little giggles that escape your body more like terrified gasps is a great way to reset the tension and let it wash over you again and again. If it never relented, we'd just go numb to it all. The things she's able to do physically, the way she can snap from absolutely terrifying to slightly cute to being terrified herself, the brief moments she regains control of her body aren't scary in that sense where you're afraid of the dark and looking for danger around every corner, but rather they just stick in your mind. As a movie trope, possession is a decently common and frequently used one, but the way her lack of agency is portrayed here, it's just on another level. A lot of clever acrobatic maneuvering needed to be done with this script in order to keep a lot of its key themes and messagings on the right path. It handles all of its core themes with so much attention to detail that you'd think this was written by someone like Stephen King, who's been writing stories within the horror genre for decades, and not a first-time director. While we're on the subject, it's also worth noting that this film was made on an absolute shoestring budget of $750,000, and yet the only way in which Obsession shows its limited resources is in how clever and efficient it can be. I honestly don't even want to spend any more time talking about the budget than I have to, because this film's merits deserve way more than having an asterisk like limited budget next to it. This thing more than stands on its own. Curry Barker deserves all his flowers and more. And it is common in media for things to thrive when given strict budgets or rigorous timelines. It forces creative people to get even more creative, and that's exactly what we have here. One of the main things this film focuses its attention on is our main character Bear, and how he goes from the character we start with to the one we end with. And it's entirely entangled in this film's main online debate, who the true antagonist of the film is. Actually, that phrasing is a little poor. Very few people think Bear isn't the villain, and if you think Nikki deserves even a shred of blame, no one really disagrees with either of those two sentiments. Where people do seem to differ is in Bear's true place in all this. I've seen some people claim he's the evil villain right from the jump, and his actions throughout the film only reveal that. And I don't think that's really fair. By the end of the film, and even a good chunk before that, Bear is absolutely an evil, antagonistic, vile wretch of a human. His inaction, his justification for what's going on around him, how he allows his cowardice and insecurities to rule over him. But let's go back to when he first makes that wish. He does not remotely think this is going to work, and this film goes to pretty good lengths to give him a few outs in regards to accepting that this wish actually came true. Notably her supposedly being on drugs that night, and his own belief that she could possibly love him the way he loves her. I think people really take for granted the fact that we're watching a film that we know has supernatural elements. The second he snapped that stick, we as an audience have already accepted that this wish has come true. But it's fair that it would take him a lot longer to truly buy into that. Not only that, but once his friends see the relationship and start to question it, he immediately gets his walls up and asks both the world and himself why it's so hard to believe that someone someone like her could love him. He shields himself within the confines of his own insecurities. This doesn't make him a good person, but I think it excuses his acts just for a little bit, with the key term there being a little bit, because obviously things snowball out of control so fucking fast, and his inaction and continued justification for what's going on around him is what truly thrusts him into villain territory. And although I think it's truly solidified once he makes that phone call to the support center, I think his role within the story was already etched in stone before then. When he frantically asks for the wish to be altered at first, Bear, you son of a bitch. This is somehow one of the film's most chilling moments as well as its funniest, and like all the humor in this film, it's perfectly grounded and believable and acts as a slight break from that unbearable tension. Like I said, basically all the humor here really only exists to reset that tension so it can crawl up your spine once again. Maybe except for Cooper Tomlinson saying he wakes up rock hard for trivia night. I think they just wrote that line in and knew it was too good to omit. But then crucially after the phone call, we get a scene of our real Nikki in bed, her ultra-obsessed ego asleep. Not only is this like the single most disturbing scene in the film, where Nikki begs and pleads for him to kill her, but this is also where Bear asks why it's such a bad thing for her to love him, which he follows up by leaving to go meet Sarah in a situation where he absolutely must know that he's putting Sarah in tremendous danger. And when Nikki catches up to them and kills Sarah, she politely and cutely tells him it's all his fault. And she's absolutely right. How little this film explains how the wish and all its magic works is one of its best decisions. The world feels so fleshed out and real, raw in a way, and it lets them introduce cool and creepy concepts like Nikki being on the phone call with that call center, her wearing Sarah's clothes and tattoos at the end, her regaining control for small periods of time and sometimes even being able to get out sentences. It lets all these moments feel like they really belong without being bogged down by having to explain how exactly it all works. And while we're talking about sick-ass scenes, her hiding in the corner of the room watching him sleep, that was actually the film's magnum opus, for like 9 different reasons. The final scene is pretty excellent too though. I'm a huge fan of ambiguous endings, and I think that could have suited this film perfectly, but instead they opted to go for a bit more of an overt ending, and I can't imagine any way in which they could have handled it better. Her screams in the background as the credits rolled somewhat reminded me of Timothée Chalamet crying into the fireplace in Call Me By Your Name. Just the film ending, and as it's washing over you, you can't help but be reminded of what you just saw. That film trusted Timmy to portray all those raw emotions for a long ass time, and he ended up getting nominated for an Oscar because of it. Could we get the same thing here? I honestly don't know. I hope so, but if Hereditary and countless other horror films over the years have taught us anything, it's that the Academy doesn't really treat horror films in the same way it treats other genres. Having said that, we are coming off the heels of back-to-back horror performance representation, with Demi Moore being nominated for Best Actress for The Substance, and Amy Madigan winning Best Supporting Actress for Weapons. So this is kind of as good a time as any to turn in a truly one-of-a-kind horror performance, and boy oh boy is the public reception to this film, and her specifically, unlike anything I have ever seen. It's hard to look outside my little bubble, but it seems like everyone within it is just aghast and blown away by how great this film is, and I would go so far as to say it's my favorite film of the last 2 years. I am very excited to see how I feel about this film in a week, a month, a couple months. I'm almost certainly overrating this thing, right? But honestly, it just doesn't feel that way. I've had immediate strong feelings for things in the past, and this just feels so much more reminiscent of those times where it's genuine. This film's been out for about 45 minutes and it's already become a core element of my DNA. If you like this video in any way and want to help support the channel, please consider subscribing. It goes such a long way for a small channel like this, and I would just really appreciate it. I took a bit of a break the last few months and I'm excited to get back into things, and a couple new subscribers really helps keep that motivation strong. Regardless, thanks for watching and take care.